It's showtime, folks.
Absolute cinema. Justin Lynch Bioc memes back for another video. Today I'll be discussing Jonathan Toews, Blackhawks legend Jonathan Toews, Winnipeg Jets legend Jonathan Toews. He has announced his retirement from the game of hockey today from the NHL. Yeah, this is quite a surreal moment. It's a moment that honestly, in a way, it's weird to say. I never thought would come in a weird way. Just it's hard to imagine a world where it's hard to imagine a hockey NHL world where Jonathan Toews isn't in it. Just as a child watching this guy playing growing up, it was really Jonathan Toews was one of the main figures that got me into hockey. Right, it was mainly Patrick Kane. Patrick Kane was my favorite player growing up, but Jonathan Toews was right behind him. He was the guy in Chicago. He was the captain. He was a leader. He was the heartbeat, identity of the squad. And yeah, I would not be such a fan of the Blackhawks, of NHL, the game of hockey, if not for Jonathan Toews. I would not be doing everything I'm doing right now if not for him. So I wanted to take a moment today to kind of reflect on his career, celebrate the career of Jonathan Toews, and just kind of speak about what he's meant to me. As someone who's kind of trying to make a career in hockey, and obviously a big fan of the game my whole life, and am now more invested in it now than ever. Kind of the impact that Toews has kind of had in that journey. So, but yeah, Jonathan Toews, today made it official. We knew it was going to happen. We knew following this season that it was going to happen. Most likely, pretty much everything from the end of the Jets season presser suggested that Toews was going to be done. I mean, First of all, let's just start the Jets tenure first, then we could get to the juicy stuff. Impressive for Toews considering he missed the previous 2 seasons because of his health complications. Right, as we know, in 2020, he unfortunately had chronic immune response syndrome that came from long COVID, that caused him to miss the entirety of that 2021 COVID shortened season. He did return for the Blackhawks in 2021, 2022. It was not the same. It was not the same prime Jonathan Toews that we knew and loved. His last 2 seasons of the Blackhawks, he was definitely playing compromise. As a result, stepped away from the game in 2023. He didn't officially retire, right? But he stepped away from the game. 23, 24, 24, 25. He didn't play. Of course, he worked his way back into playing condition, into playing weight. Underwent that healing journey in India, that 5-week healing journey, spiritual journey, and got back into his, into the playing weight that he'd seen during his prime days. Got back in good condition, playing condition, and pretty much all signs of his, past health scares, were vanquished. He was back to full health. So made that comeback, and then yeah, Winnipeg obviously signs him. They signed him last offseason ahead of this upcoming year. I mean, the fact of the matter is like we thought we were going to be seeing potentially Jonathan Toews back in the playoffs here because this is a Jets team that's coming off a President's Trophy win. They're the best regular season team in the NHL in 2025. They did lose Ehlers in free agency, and the team just kind of dropped off this year. They weren't very good. They weren't that much better than we were, honestly. They weren't that much better than the Blackhawks. Did make the playoffs this year, so we didn't get to see one more run of Toews in the playoffs. But still, it was good to see Toews make that return. The fact that he played all 82 games as well, you would not have thought. The fact this is a 37, 38-year-old Toews who had missed the previous 2 seasons, had missed 3 of the previous 5, and he was able to play every single game. It was very impressive from him. Obviously, again, well past his prime days, right? 11 goals, 18 assists, 29 points in 82 games, mostly playing in a third line center, checking defensive role, but proved he could still play. He was still good in the penalty kill, still good on draws. He could still play in sort of that, lesser role, but obviously not the same Toews that we knew from his prime days of the Blackhawks. But anyway, that's the Jets, and kudos to them for giving him a chance to kind of end his career in a high, playing, in front of his hometown crowd there, in front of his hometown fans there in Winnipeg. Obviously that's a team he grew up watching, the team he grew up cheering for. So it was a great chance for him to kind of play in front of his family, friends, etc. In his final season. So it's pretty cool for him. Good to see him kind of go out on a high there and end his career on his own terms, right? I was surprised to even see him return, right? After that 2023 season, I thought he was done, thought he was going to retire. Didn't think we'd see Toews back in the NHL. So the fact that we did get to see him return, and albeit not with the Blackhawks, which is unfortunate, but still, just to see him back in the NHL and for a likable team like the Jets, in our own conference as well, in our own division. Got to see him return to the United Center. I went to that game on January 19th. It's pretty funny too that he actually retires on June 19th. That can't be a coincidence. But yeah, I returned. I was at Jonathan Toews' return game to United Center this past year. January 19th, 2026. And of all the games I've been to at the United Center, I spoke about this in my post-game review for that game, which you can go and watch if you haven't seen it. I spoke a lot about, that event, but of all the times I've been to the United Center, I've been there for many times. I've been to multiple Blackhawks games a year since I started, becoming a fan of the team in 07, 08, Kane Toews' rookie year, when I was 4 or 5 years old, right? Kind of just getting into it. Of all the times I've been to the United Center, Blackhawks, Bulls, concerts, whatever, like, that is the most, like, that's the best atmosphere I've ever seen the place for Toews' return. When he did his kind of victory laps there, and the crowd was applauding him. The Blackhawks played his video tribute on the United Center big screen, and just I've never seen the place just as electric as it was. He had to take, like, I think 5 separate laps because the applause just kept going and going. The game was stopped for many, many minutes because the crowd just wouldn't stop cheering, and it was electric, man. It was an absolutely electric game to witness, to see Toews back at the United Center. Very strange to see him not playing as a member of the Blackhawks. It was definitely a very strange sight, to say the least. Actually, it's funny. I think I actually went to, now that I'm thinking about it, I actually went to multiple games this year where the Jets were playing at the United Center. So I think I went to, it was either late March, early April. I also went to that game. So I saw Toews twice this year. His original return game and the other one too. Obviously, they played 2 games in the United Center a year, being in our division. So no, it was great to see Toews back at the UC, the place at his home, right? Place where he won 3 cups. Well, I guess, the location he won one in 2015, but the team he won 3 cups with. And then, of course, the location of where his number 19 will be raised to the UC Rafters one day soon. I think he becomes eligible, we're at 3 years after they retire. I think they become eligible. But yeah, this is a future Hall of Famer. This is a future first ballot Hall of Famer. His number 19 will be retired by the Blackhawks. It will be in the UC Rafters. There will be a statue of him built outside the UC one day. I think as it is with with Makita and Hall, I think we're going to see Kane Toews statues built outside the United Center one day. Absolutely, I'd be shocked if there wasn't. So, and also too, like, I hope that the Blackhawks, it'd be nice if they signed him to a 1-day contract so he could retire a Blackhawk. It'd be pretty cool as well. This might be a pipe dream. I believe I've spoken about him in this channel before, maybe not. I've spoken about it on my socials, but it would be really cool if the Blackhawks did for Toews what the Penguins did for Marc-Andre Fleury this past year. For those of you who don't know, Fleury signed, a 1-game contract with the Penguins this past preseason to kind of, have a farewell tour, farewell preseason game before he, officially retired from the game. So I doubt it happens, but man, wouldn't it be cool next year if the Blackhawks were to sign Toews to a 1-game preseason contract and he played one more game in a Blackhawks uniform, one game of Toews and Bedard together on the same ice. Toews passes the torch. He passes the captaincy torch from himself to Bedsy. I think that'd be pretty awesome. I think that'd be absolute cinema. I highly doubt it happens, but man, wouldn't that be cool? At the very least, let him sign a 1-day, if he doesn't play, like, let him sign a 1-day contract so he can officially retire with a team that, of course, that he was made famous with, and achieved most of his career success with, won his Stanley Cups with, and the place that is really his true home. I know Winnipeg's his home, but really it's Chicago. So, but yeah, just want to reflect on Toews' career today. That's kind of the initial. We can go in chronological order now. Of course, Jonathan Toews was selected 3rd overall by the Chicago Blackhawks in the 2006 NHL entry draft. Very, very fortunate they dropped to 3. I mean, the fact that 2 players went ahead of him, we were very fortunate, because I do think you could argue that Toews was the best player of his draft class, definitely up there. There are other players that have an argument for that, Phil Kessel, Brad Marchand, Backstrom, etc. But I would give it to Toews. Obviously I have my biases, but I would give it to Toews. He played, his college hockey at the University of North Dakota. Was good friends with TJ Oshie there. They were big buddies there in college. Got into some trouble, but more importantly, they were very good on the ice as well. And then, of course, played World Juniors with Team Canada, where he won a gold medal in 2007. I believe he won gold with them that year. Beat Patrick Kane's American squad in the shootout to win that goal, which is pretty funny. They faced off in a shootout, having been drafted by the Blackhawks, both of them drafted by the Blackhawks. Of course, Toews played multiple years in college hockey, right? He didn't step right into the NHL. He was drafted in 06, but he played the extra year in college. 07, 08 with Patrick Kane. They debuted together, although Toews is, of course, the draft class ahead of him. And yeah, his rookie year, I mean, from day one, you could tell he was special. It did not take him a long time. Literally took him one shift, one shot. Toews on his first shot, snipes one past Nabokov and net for the Sharks. First goal on his first shot, first shift. And I believe he went his first 10 games of a point. I think he went his first 10 consecutive games with a point, 10 back-to-back games to start his career. So prime Toews was really here on day one. There was not much development with Jonathan Toews. Like, his transition to the NHL was seamless. just perfect two-way player, perfect two-way center, plays that complete all-around game, and we saw it from day one. Um, it was seamless, man. His rookie year, 24 goals, 30 assists, 54 points in 64 games. Good chance he wins the Calder that year if he doesn't go down with an injury. He does miss 18 games due to an injury. Patrick Kane, of course, stayed healthy and would win the Calder. I do think Toews was every bit as good, if not better, than Kane that year. I do think if Toews, remains healthy that year, good chance he wins the Calder. It would have been between him and Kane, right? So, but no, it's an outstanding rookie year, and showed from day one that no, he's ready to go. He's ready to go. And his rookie year was so impressive that he's actually named Blackhawks captain in just his second season. I believe he was still 19 years old. He may have been 20 at the time. He was the second youngest captain in NHL history. Only Sidney Crosby was younger for the Penguins, who also took the seat in his second year, I believe, second or third year. But yeah, just his second year at the Blackhawks, Toews has the C slapped on his chest, and as he remarked in his presser today, like Toews spoke, he reflected on his career in his retirement presser today. Mostly talked about his time at the Blackhawks, a little bit of his time at the Jets too. But like Toews remarked, like he couldn't believe that the Hawks had bestowed that honor upon him at such a young age. He even said like it seems a bit ridiculous that that the hopes and dreams of this original six franchise are being placed on a 20-year-old shoulders, but hey, I think that worked very well, and I think as the Avs announcer, he predicted this, man. Like if you go back to Toews, one of Toews' first games in his rookie year, not to go back to his rookie year, but literally the fifth game he had played, he was playing the Colorado Avalanche, scored one of the nicest goals of his career. It's just the second goal of his career. Walks in on the Avs netminder, playing his idol Joe Sakic. He was playing his idol. That's why he wore number 19, because of Sakic. Scores, just a beautiful goal, and the Avs announcer says, "This is the type of talent, folks, that could bring a franchise back from dead." And that's exactly what Toews did. Toews led the charge towards bringing this Blackhawks team back from the dead. Because before Toews and Kane's arrival, man, like it had been a long time. The Hawks had not won a Stanley Cup since the 1961 season. It had been 49 years. The team had not made the playoffs since the 2002 season, right? The 2000s were a very dark period. A lot of years, the Hawks were in the basement of the NHL. Nobody was showing up in the stands. The games weren't on TV. It was just a very, it was a dark period of Blackhawks hockey, right? Like the original six franchise, storied franchise that sort of lost its respect, lost its standing in the city, was no longer respected. But Dale Talon's roster construction, drafting in these players, Kane and Toews, and of course the previous GM before, Mike Smith, bringing Keith Seabrook, etc. This core is being built in front of their eyes, and Toews leads the charge. And ahead of his second season, has the C slapped on his chest. So he already immediately has that leadership responsibility placed on his shoulders. But man, did he live up to it. Man, did he live up to it. One of the best leaders, one of the best captains this game has ever seen. And from year two onwards, the Blackhawks are back as a playoff team. They barely missed his rookie year. Right? Blackhawks had 40 wins, 88 points his rookie year. They just barely missed the playoff spot. 08-09, they break in, right? They break in. Toews is a big sophomore year. 34 goals, 35 assists, 69 points in 82 games. Nice. Toews had an outstanding sophomore year. And yeah, Hawks make the playoffs, and they go all the way to the Western Conference Final, right? They lose to the Detroit Red Wings, the same team they lost to in the Winter Classic that year, right? Hawks lost to the Red Wings in both the Winter Classic and the Western Conference Final that year, so the Wings stopped them from advancing to the Stanley Cup Final. But no, I think Toews and that Blackhawks team, they learned a lot from that run, and they also picked up a player from that team, Marian Hossa. Marian Hossa, of course, the last piece of the puzzle, who the Hawks signed ahead of the 2009-2010 season, Toews' third year. And the rest is history, man. Hossa was the last piece of the puzzle, and that Blackhawks team erupts in 2010. Toews leading the charge, 25 goals, 43 assists, 68 points in 76 regular season games. It was a good season, but it was the playoffs where Toews really took the mantle. He took the bull by the horns. And in the playoffs, 7 goals, 22 assists, 29 points in 22 games. He wins the Conn Smythe Trophy, his playoff MVP. That's following up another impressive playoff run the year before, too, where he had 7 goals, 6 assists, 13 points, 17 games. So Toews from day one showed that he's a player who had the ability to step up in the clutch, to raise his game in the playoffs when the stakes matter most. Toews was always an outstanding playoff performer during his time at the Blackhawks, and it started from day one, man. He was a top player during that 2010 run. Patty Kane was pretty good as well, right? He definitely had an argument for the Conn Smythe as well. Of course, he had a Stanley Cup, cup clinching goal versus Philly, but Toews was really the top player of that run. He was the heartbeat of that team. and just really was the one who kind of drove that team forward, led the way, right? And to do that at such a young age, as a 21-year-old in your third season in the NHL, to be able to lead the charge and take that responsibility. Most players would crumble under that pressure, but not Jonathan Toews. Not Jonathan Toews. Pressure was not a thing to Toews, man. It was not a thing to him. His preparation off the ice, just consummate professionalism was a key factor in what drove his success in the NHL, right? Was just the perfect player, man. Did play the game the right way. Just a model, a role model for the rest of the team to follow, right? And then he keeps it going, man. He's already a Stanley Cup champion. Is in 3 years, within 3 years of the squad. Blackhawks finally, win their fourth Stanley Cup in their history, first since 1961. It's been nearly half a century since they last won a Stanley Cup. Toews leads the charge to get them back there. And yeah, from that point onward, he keeps that run going. Had a very good year in 2010-11 as well. As the Blackhawks looking to defend their trophy. Toews scored 32 goals, 44 assists, 76 points in 80 games that year. It was another very strong season for him. Hawks, unfortunately, they do lose. They do lose in the first round to the Vancouver Canucks that year. Toews did tie up Game 7 late because, as you know, the Canucks had a 3-0 lead in 2011. Hawks come storming back down, win 3 unanswered. Game 7, Hawks are down late in Vancouver. Toews ties up the game late to force Game 7, but unfortunately, Burrows slays the Dragon. The Hawks are eliminated in round 1. But still, another strong run for Jonathan. And he keeps that momentum going. 2011-2012 was on pace to be his best year. Toews was absolutely cooking this year. This is prime Jonathan Toews right here. 29 goals, 28 assists, 57 points in 59 games. Unfortunately, his season is derailed with an injury once again. He is one of those players, unfortunately, had quite a few years of his prime kind of taken away from him due to injury. At this time, many people thought that only Sidney Crosby and Alex Ovechkin cleared Jonathan Toews during this period. But during this time, I think he was ahead of Patrick Kane, right? Because Patrick Kane had his ups and downs early on in his career, right? I think, you could argue 2007 to 2015 Toews was the Blackhawks' best player. I think, after the 2015 Cup, I think, Kane kind of took his game to another level, whereas Toews kind of started to decline. So I think from that point onwards, Kane became the best Blackhawk. But I think during the Blackhawks, 2010 to 2015 Cup years, you could argue Toews was their best player. And this was right smack dab in the middle of his prime. Unfortunately, his season is hurt with an injury. He did have a good playoff run. He had a big overtime winner versus Phoenix in that first round, but it wasn't good enough. Mike Smith slams the door shot. Hawks lose once again the first round. So that's back-to-back first-round exits for the Blackhawks after winning a cup in 2010. So not ideal when you had that playoff success. You made it to consecutive Western Conference Finals. You won a cup, and then to follow that up with 2 first-round exits, not ideal for the Blackhawks, but man, would they respond. Lockout shortened season in 2013, and Toews had arguably his best season. Shockingly, the only season where he was above a point per game. 23 goals, 25 assists, 48 points in 47 games, was above a point per game, right behind Kane for the points lead, as he often was. And just an elite season from him. Pretty good in the playoffs too. 3 goals, 11 assists, 14 points in 23 games. So not his best playoff run, but he saved his best for last. He saved his best for the last in the Stanley Cup final. Was a big part of that 17 seconds, comeback there where he drove the net late, got the puck on net. Brian Bickle puts home the rebound. Blackhawks win the 2013 Cup. They scored 2 goals in 17 seconds to oust the Bruins. It's the Hawks' second cup in 4 years, 5th in their franchise history, and now Toews a multi-time Stanley Cup winner. He's also won Olympic gold medalist at this point as well. I forgot to mention 2010. He does win Olympic gold with Canada. He's one of their youngest representatives. He was their best 4 in the tournament. Crosby gets all the credit for 2010 as the man who scored the golden goal, but the puck knowers know that really it was Jonathan Toews who was Canada's MVP that year. Big reason why Canada won gold in 2010 Olympics. And he keeps on winning, man. He won the Cup that year, and then 3 years later, he's once again a Stanley Cup champion with the Blackhawks, a multi-time Cup winner now. And to keep in mind, he's still only 24, 25 years old. He's already won multiple Cups, right? Which, Crosby and Pittsburgh hadn't done that yet. Pittsburgh, Ovechkin at this point hadn't won a Cup yet. Washington. So, Toews made his mark at this point. Bruins as well, only won 1 Cup. So the Blackhawks so far are the first team in the Salary Cap era to win multiple cups. So you can tell they got something special brewing here, right? Because there were some doubts after consecutive first-round exits. There were doubts. Maybe it would be a one-off. Maybe that team would be a one-off. But the core stepped up. Toews stepped up in 2013 and, showed no. This is a team that's not going to be a one-off, and it's going to be a team that should be it should be a force to come for many years to come. So big 2013 season for Toews. It keeps that form going. Of course, the season where the Blackhawks start with 24 consecutive games without a regulation loss, and what was the best team in Blackhawks history, right? Toews is not winning the Conn Smythe that year. This time it goes to Patrick Kane, but Yeah, and next year, 2013, 2014, another good year for Toews. Another 68-point season, another 68-point 76 game season. Very good in the playoffs once again, too. 9 goals, 8 assists, 17 points in 19 games. Another All-Star game appearance as well. I believe this is the year where there was that infamous exercise your right to vote Toews video that I loved as a child. Look it up on YouTube. Jonathan Toews exercise your right to vote. Very funny video for those of you who don't get the reference. This is also the period of Blackhawks TV where there's a lot of behind-the-scenes content. There's a lot of funny pranks of Jonathan Toews back in the day on the Blackhawks YouTube. A lot of funny moments, Blackhawks in the movies, 2 for slashing. A lot of just iconic Toews moments off the ice. With Toews and Kane back on the Blackhawks, we're very good at promoting the young players, right? No, it was a very good season in 13-14 for Toews, right? Still during his prime, still during his prime playing days. Of course, the Hawks, unfortunately, they do lose in the Western Conference Final that year to the Kings, and probably what was their most heartbreaking loss, I would say, of this era. Hawks could have easily won, back to back to back, 3 straight Stanley Cups. Could have easily won three in a row. I think they would have beat New York in that final. So yeah, it was a tough loss, but they come storming back. They take it personally in 2014-15. Hawks take it personally. Another big year for Toews. 28 goals, 38 assists, 66 points in 81 games. They steps up once again the playoffs. 10 goals, 11 assists, 21 points in 23 games. And the Blackhawks win 3 cups in 6 seasons. They seal the modern-day dynasty. They finally win a cup at the United Center, right? Because 2010, 2013 were on the road. Hawks finally win a cup at the UC. 6 games once again. All 3 years were 6 games. Hawks beat Tampa at home. Toews lifts Lord Stanley above his head for the first Blackhawks championship in Chicago since 1938, because every other one had been on the road, right? 34, 61, 10, 13, we're all on the road. 15, they finally win a cup on home ice at Chicago, at the United Center. United Center witnesses its first cup. So, and Toews was just absolutely elite during that run. So yeah, at this point, Hawks have won 3 cups in 6 years. Toews extended for a $10.5 million contract prior to that 14-15 season. So that was the year that both Toews and Kane signed those identical 8-year, $10.5 million contracts. And yeah, at this point, you think, okay, Hawks have won 3 cups in 6 years. And there's no reason to think at that point they couldn't win more. Like, I look at, the core is still intact. Obviously, the depth ends up changing around, but 15-16 arrives. Hawks, so once again, another strong year, 50+ wins. Actually, I think that was the following season, but 15-16, another good year. Of course, this is when Panarin arrives. Of course, unfortunately, the Blackhawks do lose in the first round that year to St. Louis. This is more of a down year for Toews. This is kind of when the decline starts happening, right? Still very good, but this is kind of when the decline starts happening. 28 goals, 30 assists, 58 points in 80 games, and then no goals during that first round series versus St. Louis. So this is kind of when Toews' games start to trail off a bit. 16-17 as well, another 58-point year, 72 games, so he had a bit of an injury there. And then, of course, this is the year the Blackhawks were, tops of the Western Conference, 50+ wins, 100+ points, but they're swept by the Nashville Predators in the first round. And this is when Stan Bowman decides to obliterate that Blackhawks core. And that was the end of the Blackhawks kind of contending playoff days from there. They do get back in one time later, but of course, as we know, those were extenuating circumstances. So, and yeah, the next season was kind of another tougher year. 20 goals, 32 assists, 52.74 games. So that's kind of 3 years in a row where Toews isn't quite at the top of his game, right? This is kind of when it starts to trail off. Maybe a lot of that hockey that's been played is starting to wear on him a little bit there, right? To be fair to Toews, the offensive, his offensive game, while very strong, he could be playing he's a guy who could produce at a point per game rate, when fully healthy at his best. But as we know, it wasn't Toews' offensive game that made him who he was. It was his all-around game. It was defensive game. His ability to play, is strong in all 3 zones: offense, defense, neutral zone, everything. It was Toews' complete game, all-around game that made him who he was, right? Not to say he couldn't produce. He had a great shot, great release, great skater. Had that kind of power forward instinct in him as a first-line center, as a perfect first-line center your team needs. Selke winner, right? 2013 Selke winner. He was right up there with Patrice Bergeron for one of the best two-way players of his era, right? The stats don't tell the full story of Toews, right? One of the best face-off men of his era as well. Best penalty killer as well. You could play him in any situation, right? And also a guy who stepped up the most when it mattered in the playoffs, right? There's a lot of top players today who don't have the cups yet. Toews won 3. Toews won 3 cups. There are very few players in the modern era, especially salary cap era, that have won 3 cups, and Toews is one of them. So, and to be fair to Toews, he does have a bit of a resurrection here late in his career, right? 2018-19 season, he really gets back going. Actually sets career highs across the board here. 35 goals, 46 assists, 81 points in 82 games, a career best season from him. Hawks, once again, back-to-back years, they missed the playoffs, and that's the year that Joel Quenneville was fired, and we bring in Jeremy Colleton. Vietnam flashbacks intensify of Colleton, and Jonathan Toews was effectively the coach of that team at that point. The players kind of had the coach themselves with Colleton, but yeah, suddenly Prime Toews is back, right? He disappeared for a bit, but Prime Toews has returned. Strong year for him, around a point per game rate, at a very strong season. He kept it going as well in 1920, right? 18 goals, 42 assists, 60 points in 70 games. A strong season for him. Of course, it was a COVID-short season, right? In March, the season was suspended. Of course, that wasn't resumed until, late July, early August when they had the COVID bubble playoffs. And Toews, man, in this series versus Edmonton, right? The Hawks are the 23rd place team. They probably shouldn't have been in the playoffs. They were not going to make it, but mathematically they weren't eliminated, so they were invited as a 23rd team. In the wild card series, they face off against the top-ranked, or the 5-ranked Edmonton Oilers, top-ranked for a wild card team. Nobody expected the Hawks to win that series, but Toews, 7 points in 4 games, the Blackhawks' top player, and he ousted McDavid's Oilers. He and the Blackhawks ousted McDavid's Oilers and advanced to the first round, the first effective round, right, to play Vegas. They do lose to Vegas and eliminate them, but no, Toews, 5 goals, 4 assists, 9 points in 9 games during that playoff run. It was good to see one more playoff run with Toews, with Kane, with that Blackhawks core, right? It's good to see them get one more run. Of course, that was it from there. Unfortunately, Toews as well, right when he's kind of regaining his spark, the last 2 seasons, Toews has kind of returned to form after kind of dropping off a bit, declining. Toews has returned to form these last 2 years, and unfortunately, he gets hit, the long COVID, chronic immune response syndrome, misses the 2021 season, right? The COVID-shortened season. He misses that entire year because of that. He does return 2 seasons later in 2021, 2022. He returns. But it's not the same Jonathan Toews. You could tell he's playing compromised. He's not playing fully healthy. I think he went the first 25 games or something without a goal. It took him a long time to get on the board. And just so he was himself. Of course, the Blackhawks as well are in decline at this stage as well, right? This is kind of when the rebuild starts, kind of, second half, post-trade deadline of that season. That's kind of when the rebuild starts under Kyle Davidson, because Stan Bowman, as we know, he had another disaster offseason in 2021, right? Another disaster offseason from Stan Bowman. And yeah, this Blackhawks team, of course, Bowman's fired early on in the 2021-2022 season, and Kyle Davidson takes over and kind of implements a rebuild there. So, but yeah, it's a tough year for Toews. 12 goals, 25 assists, 37 points, 71 games. He plays one more year at the Hawks in 2022, 2023. This is the Bedard tank year, so this is when the rebuild really starts. This is the last year of Toews and Kane's contract, so the thought is going to that season, their futures are both in doubt. Most people thought, and the expectation was that this is probably going to be the last year at the Blackhawks, just based on the direction the team was going. It was pretty clear that, Toews and Kane probably weren't going to extend. They're probably going to go elsewhere. It was a better year for Toews compared to the previous year. 15 goals, 16 assists, 31 points, 53 games. Does miss quite a bit of time due to injury as well, and yeah, he steps away from the game after that season, does not extend. He steps away from the game, does not retire. But yeah, the thought was at the time that it was kind of his unofficial retirement, and we'd probably hear an announcement from him, not too long in the future. But and yeah, that's the end of his Blackhawks playing days. And obviously a very iconic moment he did in his last game at the Blackhawks at home versus Philly in April. He does get on the board in his last game with the Blackhawks, which is a great moment. Good to see him get one more. Hawks do lose that game. Toews had a breakaway in that game. He had a chance to win the game in overtime for the Blackhawks. They do lose it to Philly, which if he had scored that goal, Blackhawks do not land Connor Bedard in the draft lottery. So I think Toews was just thinking ahead with that one. But yeah, Toews does, obviously we knew going into that last game that was going to be his last game at the Blackhawks. It's a very emotional game, and Toews salutes the crowd, salutes the United Center faithful, and that's it for Toews of the Blackhawks. So, but it wasn't yet it for his career, right? We thought it was. We thought that was going to be it for Toews, but after 2 seasons, right, he was away from the game, but he does come back to play one more year at the Winnipeg Jets this past year. He completes the comeback after undergoing that healing journey in India that I referenced earlier, and he does play one more year. Again, just like the Toews we saw kind of his last years of the Hawks, it wasn't prime Toews, right? He's well past his prime years, but still, it was a respectable season for him. He showed he could still play and ended on his own terms, and he also was able to amass his 900th career point as well. So he's able to cap off some milestones there, playing for his home team. It's a shame. Like, on one hand, it's a bit bittersweet, right? It's good to see Toews back in the NHL. It would have been nice, though, if he kind of just played his whole career at the Blackhawks, right? But you can't blame him. I think it was definitely much more bearable watching Toews play for his hometown Jets team versus watching Kane play for Detroit. Much different circumstances. So, but yeah, that's it for Toews. He officially announced his retirement. Maybe could have played another year, but I'm not surprised at this point. He's got nothing left to prove. He's won 3 championships, won the Conn Smythe, won the Mark Messier, won the Selke, multi-time Olympic winner in 2010, 2014 as well. He also won in 2014, I forgot to mention. 2016 World Cup of Hockey winner. He's won the World Juniors. He's won the World Championships. Toews has won everywhere he's played, right? He's won everywhere he's played, and this is it. And then his final career stats after 16 seasons: 15th the Blackhawks, 1,149 career regular season games, 383 goals, 529 assists, 912 points in that time. But it's the playoffs where it's really impressive. 137 career playoff games, all of the Blackhawks, 45 goals, 74 assists, 119 points in that period. Of course, 3 Stanley Cups along the way. So, yeah, Toews were officially steps away from the game, and now we can do some more big picture talk. In terms of best Blackhawks of all time, Toews is right up there, man. He's right up there. I think for me, it goes Patrick Kane, it goes Stan Mikita, it goes Bobby Hull. I think Toews is number 4. I think you could argue right behind Kane. You could argue number 2. And honestly, if you want to make the argument for 1, you can make that argument, absolutely. I know his stats might not be up there with Kane, but I think Toews is all-around game. I don't think there's ever been a better all-around player for the Blackhawks than Jonathan Toews was. Perfect first line center, could do everything, right? This is the type of center that you win with in the playoffs, right? Blackhawks do not win 3 Stanley Cups without the contributions of Jonathan Toews leading the way, without his leadership. He was the heartbeat of that dynasty. If Patrick Kane was the best player of those 2010s Blackhawks teams, of that core, Jonathan Toews was the most important player. He was the driver. He was the man. He was the man who led the charge. The player who led the charge of those teams. And yeah, one of my favorite Blackhawks for a reason, right? Kane, Toews led the way. They're that dynamic duo that power those teams forward. They're interchangeable, right? Just like Mikita and Hall were, just like Jordan Pippen, it was Kane, Toews in regards to the 2010s Blackhawks. And fun fact, I don't think I've ever mentioned this on this channel before, but I used to have 2 ferrets. You know what I named them? I named them Kane and Toews. I had 2 ferrets named Kane and Toews. They actually passed away. That they're in their final seasons as Blackhawks. Funny enough, so. And yeah, of course, Kane was traded to New York, and then Toews stepped away. But anyway, getting back to Toews, yeah, one of the most iconic, best players in Blackhawks history. He will have his number 19 retired. He will be in the Hockey Hall of Fame one day. Absolutely, he will. And what a moment that will be, man. What a moment that will be. One of the most respected players of the game of hockey. And in terms of, players in the modern era, there's been few that have impacted the game the way that Jonathan Toews has. He is a player that you will continue to see his jersey in the United Center for many years to come. Even though he's no longer a Blackhawk, you will see number 19 worn constantly in the United Center for many years to come. And just for Jonathan Toews, man, like this man, big reason why my childhood was so special, man. Adulthood watching the Blackhawks has been tough. There's been a lot of bottom feeder seasons, but you can't take that childhood away from me. You can't take those 2010s teams away. You can't take those 3 Stanley Cups away, man. It was a very special time in the city. As a Blackhawks fan, it was a very special time. Got me into the game of hockey, got me into the sport. And Toews is one of the main figures that did it. It was him and Kane. Of course, Haas, of course, Sharp, of course, Keith Seaver, Alverson, all those guys, Crow, but Jonathan Toews and Patrick Kane were really the 2 that led the charge, and just couldn't be thankful enough for Toews' contributions to the Blackhawks. He will forever be a Chicago legend. He will forever be a Chicago sports legend. And not only just one of the best Blackhawks of all time, one of the best Chicago athletes of all time. He's absolutely up there. I think in terms of Blackhawks, Mount Rushmore's, he has to be up there. Absolutely he is. And in terms of franchise leaders as well, I think he's number 6 all time in points as well. So he's right up there in terms of every stat. It's a shame as well. Of course, it's another case of a bit of what ifs too. Like, it's a shame that injuries. It's a shame that the COVID sickness impacted his career. Like, it would have been nice to see, because prime Toews was cut short. Right, 2020 is still playing very good hockey. It's a shame that his prime kind of got prematurely cut off, not on his own terms. Right, kind of beyond hhis control. I think Toews had many good years left in him, just like Kane. I think Toews had a lot of good hockey left in him, but unfortunately, his career was compromised, based on the fact that he's obviously only played 3 of the last 6 years and had to miss 3 years due to, sickness, injury, and whatnot. So it's a shame that impacted his career, and unfortunately, I think his legacy, in terms of new fans, they don't know how good Toews is. Like, they didn't get to see prime Toews. The Toews we've seen the past few years is not Jonathan Toews, man. The Toews that, should be remembered was 2007 to 2020 Jonathan Toews, man. He was special. Always so consistent, man. Always so consistent. Maybe he wouldn't be amongst the league leaders in production, but he'd always be hovering around a point per game, right? And there are a few players that can impact the game, beyond the score sheet the way that Jonathan Toews could, right? That was just the player he was. And he was the Blackhawks, man. He was the heart of the Blackhawks during this period. He really was. So just very thankful to be able to witness him, right? Because many people don't get that lucky to witness a talent like that. To witness a player, captain, lead your team in 3 Stanley Cups. Very fortunate to see it. Of course, I was a child. I obviously wasn't as knowledgeable as I was back then, but still, it made that period special for me. It's why I got into playing hockey, watching hockey, and now I'm covering hockey because of it. So, and Jonathan Toews is a big reason why I've gotten to this point. So, very thankful for him. Just to be able to witness a player like that. You're very fortunate to be able to do so as a fan. So, speaking as a fan, I'm just very thankful to Jonathan, and I wish him nothing but the best in retirement. I'm sure he will still be involved in the game in some fashion. I'm sure he will. Toews has the mind. He has the ability if he wants to still stick around, in some other capacity, whether that's a coach, general manager, commentator, analyst, development coach, whatever. It'd be cool if the Hawks could bring him on in some fashion. It would probably be if Winnipeg, right? Because that's his hometown team. So if he were to kind of stick around in some other fashion, some staff, front office role, it'd probably be if Winnipeg. But it'd be cool if the Hawks brought him back in some fashion. But I'd be surprised that happened. But it would be cool, though. It would be cool. But I don't know if he still has his place here or not, right? I'm not sure if he still has his place here. I doubt it. But yeah, no, Jonathan Toews. I mean, there's so much to say about it. There's so many stories of him, so many moments. I could talk all day about Taser. I could go all day here, but I'm not gonna ramble too much, man. I just overall just wanted to say some words about him. Most of these videos that come on, I have some sort of script outline. Today it was just no. I just wanted to talk about Taser, speak from the heart, and just kind of reminisce on one of my favorite players growing up, and one of the main kind of guys that got me into the sport. I'm just very thankful that I had the chance to witness him, and hope that's something that this current group can look at, right? Hopefully it's something that if Bedard's going to be captain one day, which I do think he will. I think we'll hopefully he can kind of learn from sort of he can learn from kind of the roadmap that Tays left, right? I think Tays set the example. He showed how to do it, and hopefully Bedard and Co can kind of look at how that 2010s team was able to perform, and sort of try to emulate in the best way they can. Of course, there's never gonna be a team like that though. Like, let's be real, the 2010s Blackhawks are gonna be very hard to emulate. There's never gonna be a team like that again. It's a very special time, and Tays led the way, and he'll always be a legend for that, right? I think there's the old adage, right? Don't cry because it's over, smile because it happened. And I'm very thankful I got to witness it. I'm very thankful that it happened, and we'll forever be grateful to be able to witness the legend, the hockey legend that is Jonathan Toews. So, thank you, Taser, and best of luck in retirement. Congrats on retirement. And from a Blackhawks fan, from the heart, thank you for everything. And best of luck with everything post-hockey career. Anyway, that's all I got for this one, folks. Thank you all so much for watching. This is Justin Lynch, Be Off Memes out. I will see you all in the next one. If you like this video, feel free to like it, subscribe to the channel if you want more content, and hype the video on YouTube to help it reach more traction. And yeah, that's all I got for this one. Thank you all so much for watching. This is Justin Lynch, Be Off Memes out. And we will see you all in the next one, baby. Absolute cinema. Thank you, Jonathan. Boop.